thank you all for being here today. It is so important for us to be together during these incredibly difficult days. I'm sure that you join me in having many feelings these days. Immense grief, sadness, anger, wanting to, frankly, wrap our arms around and hug our Israeli family. The horrific terrorist attack waged by Hamas on Israeli civilians on October 7th are unimaginable, though we know them to be very, very real. As of right now, we know that there are at least 203 hostages being held by Hamas. Women, children, babies, elderly, Holocaust survivors. We in Cleveland stand strong with Israel, and we have demonstrated this from the very moment that we all heard the news. We showed up in large numbers from across Jewish Cleveland and the general community of Cleveland at our community gathering and have given generously to our emergency campaign. I want to thank you for everything you have done and will continue to do. This may be a long war. And here in Cleveland, we have work to do to support our Israeli brothers and sisters. We need to engage in conversation with our family and friends and colleagues about Hamas and stand up together against pure evil and educate ignorance. This past weekend, we ran a full-page ad in Cleveland's Sunday Plain Dealer, and it will be run this week in the Cleveland Jewish News. It includes over 250 signatures of elected officials, businesses, and faith-based and community partners who stand with us together with Israel against terror. We must also keep the hostages, their names and faces in the news and in our social media feeds. We need to demand that they are brought home now. We also want to provide you with insight into what's happening in Israel and how you can continue to help Israel and Israelis and what else you can do to make a difference locally. Our event this afternoon is just one example. I want to acknowledge the continued leadership and support of Dan Zellman, board chair, and Beth Wayne Brandon, campaign chair. I especially want to thank Jason Williger, Michael Haas, and Brendan Butcher for co-chairing this Israel emergency campaign. And note that this is the first time we've had a general community chair. So thank you so much, Brendan. Together, you're making sure we raise the much needed funds and friends for our family in Israel. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Jason Williger to introduce Dr. Michael Oren, who will provide us with a timely briefing on the current situation. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you for what you've been doing. To have someone in leadership of your quality is important all the time, but even more so in moments of crisis like this. And it's been such a privilege to see you work and how you make us all so much more effective. It's truly an honor for me to have the chance to introduce Dr. Oren. One of the biggest debates we had was how to address him because he's had so many titles over the years, but we're told that Dr. Oren is what he prefers. He's been a statesman, a historian, a soldier, an author, born in New York and educated at Princeton and Columbia. He has 4 degrees in Middle East history and has received 4 honorary doctorates. He moved to Israel in the 70s to join the IDF as a lone soldier in the paratroopers. In 2009, Dr. Oren was appointed Israel's ambassador to the United States. He dealt with crucial strategic issues, such as the Iron Dome defense system and the Iran nuclear threat. Upon returning to Israel, he was elected to the Knesset, where he headed a classified committee on international affairs and served as deputy minister in the prime minister's office in charge of diplomacy. Since leaving public office, he's done many things. A few of them are being president of the Hadass Malka Center, which supports Israel Border Police and their families, and is the founder of Israel 2048, dedicated to stimulating and facilitating dialogue on Israel's future. Since leaving public office, in addition to that, He has also represented Israeli high tech abroad, and he serves as an advisor to United Hatzalah. In fact, United Hatzalah was one of the first recipients of the Israel Emergency Campaign. And I just want to pause here because I'm going to talk to you more about this after Dr. Oren finishes his remarks, and I'm not going to go on long because we want to be respectful of his time. But as you can see on your screen, if you haven't already, this is the way to donate to the Israel Emergency Campaign, and we need your help. There are unprecedented needs there. I don't need to go on at length about that. I think everyone on the call knows what is going on and the enormity of the need. So please, if you haven't yet given, consider doing it now. 100% of the dollars donated will go to helping people. The Federation is absorbing the administrative costs, as they always do in emergency campaigns. Also, you can rest assured that the money is going to go where it's most needed, because there's a special allocations committee that's been created, co-chaired by Cleveland's own Steve Hoffman, to make sure the money is always going to areas of greatest need. Finally, any dollar you give is going to be matched by the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Foundation up to $15 million. So please, again, consider giving now if you haven't already. And with that, let me turn it over to Dr. Oren, who joins us today from Israel. When he has finished his remarks, we will do some brief Q&A. Dr. Oren, can you please share the latest developments from the last 24 hours?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, each and every one of you in the extraordinary Jewish community of Cleveland. Erev Tov. It's Erev here, Lila. I won't go back to Lisa and Dave. Let me go back to the last 4 minutes, Jason, with your permission. We just had another siren here. Welcome to our family bomb shelter. Don't let the folks behind you fool you. It is a bomb shelter. Tammy and I were downstairs when the siren went off. We had to run up the stairs, but what was rather extraordinary was that our cat, Bruno, is so well accustomed to these air raids, to the rocket fire, that as soon as he hears the siren, he runs up the stairs into the bomb shelter. I've never seen anything like it. I think, a rare moment of levity in what has been over the last 13 days, nothing short of a nightmare. Nothing short of a nightmare for the people and state of Israel. To bring you back to that infamous day, October 7th, a holiday, Simchat Torah, when barbarous hordes, and I think that's an understatement. We talk about barbarousness. We talk about inhumanity when they're called animals, because it's an insult to animals. Animals would not act in this way. Broke through our southern defenses, overran 22 communities, farms, cities in southern Israel, killed 1,500 people, took over 200 hostages. They maimed, they murdered, they raped, they burned, they beheaded. The stories that we hear every day are not heartbreaking. They're not heartbreaking. They're soul crushing. They're soul crushing. I do during the day. I do a lot of Israeli media, and they've now brought psychologists into our TV channels because our journalists can't take it anymore. And frankly, listening to these stories after more is literally unbearable. What these monsters have done. Monsters have done. Israel is preparing to strike back. And I've noticed in the Western press, and I follow the American press very closely, there's this rising sense that maybe Israel shouldn't do this. Maybe Israel shouldn't strike back, that the cost will be too prohibitive, that there's going to be a tremendous amount of loss of life, Israeli as well as Palestinian, widespread destruction. The lives of the hostages are liable to be grievously endangered. And Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, well, they may be degraded. At the end of the day, you can't really wipe them out entirely. They're only going to grow back again, like some kind of weed. They're going to grow back again. And that's the position of much of the Western press. And yet, the reality is this. Israel has to act. It is essential not only for our security, it's essential for our survival. And I will go even further, it's essential for our soul. What was lost on October 7th was not just, I say just with great italics, 1,500 Israeli lives and 202 hostages. What was lost was our power of deterrence. What was lost was our ability to strike fear in the hearts of our enemies. And that has left us in a very perilous position. And so we must act to restore that fear, to restore that deterrence power. You know, I'm an historian, and I look back at different wars in our past, and you know, there are many similarities with the Yom Kippur War, the surprise attack. There were similarities with the War of Independence, in which 1% of our population was lost, and that war too was fought in the cities and the farms and the fields. But it's really a great comparison with the Six-Day War. Six-Day War was fought to restore Israel's deterrence. No Arab ever took a shot at us. We shot first because we're afraid if we didn't shoot, then the message would get out that you could intimidate us, you could threaten us with annihilation, and we wouldn't do anything. We must restore our deterrence power so this never again happens. But there's another reason, I would say a profound reason, and that is we have to restore the covenant between the state of Israel and the people of Israel. This state was founded 3 years almost to the date after the end of the Holocaust, May 1945 to May 1948, almost 3 years to the date. And it was made with a promise. The promise was that Holocaust would never happen again, that the state would defend its citizens from atrocities. And that was broken. That social contract was dented, as you were, on October 7th. And we have to rebuild that again. And rebuilding it, we cannot rebuild that under the warheads of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The army has to restore, has to regain its confidence in the people, in the minds and hearts of the people of Israel. That's absolutely essential as we look forward. But that is in the future. That is in the future. For the time being, our army is prepared. It is coiled, as it were. 360,000 reservists have been called up. 360,000 reservists, together with a standing army of probably about 125,000 soldiers. The exact number is actually classified, but I will assure you that it is more than double the size of the British and French armies combined. It is larger than the force that the coalition sent into Iraq in 2003. It's a massive, massive force. The Air Force, ground forces, naval forces continue to pound Hamas and PIJ positions. They're clearing away, in many ways, the rubble so that our tanks and troops can move in and begin the arduous task. And I would say the Herculean task of clearing Hamas and PIJ out of Gaza. Now, as you mentioned, Jason, I've been a soldier before, and I know Gaza well. I fought in Gaza. You're talking about what for any soldier is a nightmare. It's because it's in addition to the warren of alleyways and cul-de-sacs, each of them are mined and booby-trapped and enfiladed with crossfires. The major fighting is beneath the ground, in the dozens and dozens and dozens of miles of tunnels and bunkers that Hamas has dug under the city of Gaza and under other major cities in the Gaza Strip. And so the fighting is going to have to be tunnel to tunnel, bunker to bunker, and probably very expensive in terms of our losses in this war. Therefore, it was very essential that Israel demand that the Palestinian civilian population evacuate this entire area. We're talking about upwards of 1 million Palestinian civilians who are to move into the southern part of the strip. The other part of the strip, the nether part of the strip is very densely populated. The southern part of the strip is all agricultural, it's open fields and room for these people. And it is unpleasant and extreme. And I don't think many people take a lot of joy at it, though I don't think many Israelis feel particularly aggrieved by it. In contrast to much of the world that receives this Palestinian population as sort of innocent bystanders, most Israelis do not see it that way. They see that this is a population that voted for Hamas, that celebrated Hamas, that celebrated when Hamas killed our people, gave out candy and shot off fireworks. Not so innocent. And many thousands of Palestinians who were not members of Hamas took part in the massacres of October 7th and October 8th. They broke through the fence themselves, and some of them even took hostages. Not all the hostages are in the hands of the terrorists. So in any case, Israel is trying to move this population out. So actually in an attempt to save and cut down on collateral damage, on civilian deaths. But it has caused all sorts of issues in the world, not the least of which with our American allies. We've experienced truly historical events in the last week and a half in our relationship with the United States. And as you know, I've been around a long time, decades and decades, involved in the U.S.'s relations, both as an historian as well as a practitioner. And I cannot recall a series of events like this. Nothing. beginning with President Biden's speech. We watched it. Everyone around the television watching it with tears running down our cheeks. I had never heard a speech like this, where the president gets up and talks about his losses. And here's a man who was widowed and lost 2 children, talking about his losses and comparing it to our losses, talking about comparing Hamas atrocities to those of the Nazis, talking about evil. The president of the United States talking about evil in the world and the need to stand up to evil, unequivocally supporting our right to defend ourselves, categorically condemning terror, and then going beyond that and making strategic gestures which are, in terms of Washington's policies, would be unthinkable. It went far beyond what I thought was possible, because if there's one thing that Republicans and Democrats agree on in Washington, and believe me, there aren't many things, it's on isolationism. It's on the need to avoid further entanglements in foreign military ventures, particularly in the Middle East, staying the heck out of it. And for the last decade, America has been withdrawing. It drew from the Middle East, but it drew from other places as well. And here comes President Biden and says, no, we're going to send 2 aircraft carriers. And I've been on these aircraft carriers. It's 70 to 75 fighter jets plus Tomahawk missiles and other very advanced deadly systems, surrounded not just two aircraft carriers, but entire flotillas around them of destroyers and gunboats. Move them right into the heart of this war zone, and saying a very clear message to Israel's enemies. If those were thinking of getting involved, that is Hezbollah and its patron Iran, they've said, don't. And that amazing speech then was backed up by the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, who came here and talked about his deep Jewish connection to Israel and his Jew connection to the Holocaust and the atrocities committed by Hamas. An administration that is openly willing to take on, frankly, a dysfunctional Congress to get us the aid we need. We're talking about billions of dollars of aid. An administration that is sending us emergency ammunition supplies even before we've asked. I don't know anything like this. And yet, this administration has its interests, and these were made explicit during the president's visit here yesterday. Again, an historic event. To find anything like it, besides his visit to Kiev last February, you have to go back to 1963 to John F. Kennedy's visit to Berlin during the Berlin crisis. How rare it is for the president to go into a war zone. And so again, the president reiterated his amazing messages to us that were so deeply important. He met with hostages. He met with the founder of Hatzalah, with Eli Bear. Really, I'm almost speechless in talking about it. But there are some strengths. And what are the strengths? They are these. One, the president asked publicly, and I'm sure he reiterated privately, that he expects Israel to make every human effort to limit as much as possible the injuries on the side of the Palestinian people, the civilian population, referred to euphemistically perhaps as collateral damage. He was insisting on opening a humanitarian corridor to bring food and water to the hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees who are now gathered in the southern part of the Strip. Now, that would seem like an obvious request to make to the Israelis, but the Israeli public was dead set against it. I have spent the last few days visiting the families of hostages, wonderful families, remarkable families. They were very hurt by this. They say, we have had no information about our loved ones, nothing, not a word from the Red Cross, anything. Why should the Palestinians be let off free? Why should we give up all of our leverage over Hamas? And a very difficult call for the government to make, but the president made that request, and apparently this corridor will be open. In the long run, I think, and I say this not without ambivalence, in the long run, it'll probably be better for the state of Israel not to have pictures of large-scale Palestinian suffering being bombarded around the world, and that will give us time and space to do what we need to do militarily as well. The third request that the president made was about the day after, that he's urging Israeli decision makers to begin thinking now about what will happen after Israel wages this war inside Gaza, after it expels, uproots, and destroys Hamas. Does Israel want to be left in Gaza, sort of holding the keys to Gaza? Who's going to take the keys from us? Or are we talking about an open-ended occupation, or in our case, a reoccupation of Gaza? I think it's a legitimate request, and I hope our our decision makers are engaged in an intimate discussion with the United States, with Arab allies as well, about what to do about the morning after, perhaps some type of international force, an all Arab force, some type of involvement of the Palestinian Authority, and maybe the installment of a peaceful government that can transform Gaza into the breadbasket that it is. The soil of Gaza is very fertile. When before 2008, 2005, when Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip, the 21 Israeli settlements there provided all the organic vegetables for the entire state. Amazing, very fertile, and it's not a desert at all, and wonderful beachfronts. It is, it could be the Riviera of the Mediterranean, but not under Hamas, not under Hamas. So the president came, the president left. Our forces continued to build up. Firing tonight. The rocket fire continues throughout the country. Thousands of rockets have been fired at us. We had a home just on the street that was completely obliterated by these rockets. We saw the power of one of these rockets very close up. And guess you get kind of benumbed to it. But we cannot go back to the status quo ante. We cannot, as I said earlier. And we have to brace ourselves, not only for a very prolonged and very difficult war in Gaza, but also for the possibility of the opening of a second front in the north with Hezbollah backed by Iran. I ruffled some feathers the other day in the Israeli press by suggesting that maybe we should hold off on invading Hamas. Hamas is not going anywhere. It's trapped. Maybe we should focus on Hezbollah, which is actually a vastly greater threat. They have 150,000 rockets in their arsenal. Many they're accurate, very accurate rockets. They're fully backed by Iran. They have endless supply lines and maneuverability. And they have a fighting force that has been practicing genocide in Syria for the last 10 years. So imagine what they did that up to the Syrians. They killed 500,000 Syrians. Imagine what they're going to do to us. And eventually Hezbollah is going to join this fight anyway. Everyone pretty much feels that Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, will not sit by idly while Israel destroys Hamas. They'll have to be involved. And already we've lost about 7 soldiers on the northern border for firing, and rockets hit Kiryat Shmona tonight at the same time they were hitting Sderot in the south. So this is our situation. So we may have a two-front war. Therefore, the presence of these American flotillas is very much welcome. There was a question in Israel whether Joe Biden would pull the trigger. I know Joe Biden very well. I work with him. I work with Tony Blinken. They will pull the trigger. I'm convinced of that. And what exactly that means, to what extent, I don't know. But those flotillas are not there for show. They're not. America's back. America's projecting power again. It's a message not just to the Middle East. It's a message to Russia. It's a message to China. America is back. A couple of years ago, when I was in government, the prime minister called me with some very bad news. He told me I was in charge of Gaza for a year and a half, and I got to tell you, after a year and a half, I probably learned more. Jason mentioned all those great degrees I have. I probably learned more about the Middle East and Middle East history during that year and a half than I learned in all those years in university. And this is what I learned about Gaza. Everything you know about human decency, everything you know about civilization, you can throw out the window when it comes to Gaza, Hamas, and Palestine, Islamic Jihad. The Iranians there are willing to fight Israel to the last Palestinian. Mahmoud Abbas on the West Bank and Judea and Samaria is willing to fight Hamas to the last Israeli. And Hamas cares nothing for human life. They lose hundreds of children every year digging tunnels. They send their own kids there because the tunnels collapse. Hamas maintains a humanitarian disaster, low level, in Gaza because they won't let food and medicines into the strip that we're willing to send. By the way, I was in charge of the blockade. Don't let anybody tell you the blockade is about food or tomatoes and anything. It's only about arms and materials that can be used as arms, like a block of irrigation pipe, like the length of irrigation pipe. They use it for projectiles. Every irrigation pipe moved into Gaza became a rocket. That's why they have no water, not because of us. That's Gaza. We hope we can change it. That the first step to changing it is, first of all, uprooting, destroying, extirpating, exterminating Hamas and Islamic Jihad. We hope that we can release our hostages. I face these families every day, and it is gut-wrenching, not heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, and you have to look in the eye and say, we're going to do our best, because we will do our best. We have special forces. This is what they're trying to do, to go and get hostages. We will do our best. It's essential throughout that we can count on the people of Israel who have volunteered, not in the tens of thousands, perhaps in the hundreds of thousands, their time, their efforts, their money, their food. There was a report on the radio today that they have so much food stacked up along the southern border that's been donated, they have no place to put the food anymore. Everybody is volunteering, everybody is giving their all, but it's not just here, it's the Jewish people worldwide. And I've heard about your outstanding contributions in the Cleveland Jewish community, $26 million. That is really amazing, amazing. You're gathering 2,000 people. It's a lot of people in Cleveland. Matching funds from the Mandel Foundation, I understand, it's about $12 million. Oh, it is breathtaking. What can I say? That we've come together, and this after a period when there were big divisions on so many different levels: political divisions, religious divisions, ethnic divisions. If there's one ironic, tragic silver lining to this horrible war, is that Hamas has reminded us of who we are. It has reminded us of who we are as a nation, remind us who we are as a state, and remind us of who we are as a people. We are the Jewish people. Whether here in southern Tel Aviv or in Cleveland, Ohio, we are one people, and we will stand together. And that's been our secret for survival for 4,000 years, and we've overcome some pretty big obstacles. I think you'll all agree. This is the next one. We will overcome this one too. We will win. We will rebuild. We will restore our deterrence power. We will rededicate the covenant between the people and the state of Israel. And we will reassert our right to be a free people in our ancestral homeland, the land of Israel. Now, I'm not in any official position right now, but I think I speak for the entire people and state of Israel in saying to each and every one of you, Todah Rabbah, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what I know you will do. Stay with us. It's not going to be easy. There'll be darker days, but stay with us. We're going to get through this together. You, people of Israel, the Jewish people everywhere. We will survive. We'll thrive. It will be okay. Todah Rabbah. Your questions, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oren. That was incredibly helpful and insightful, as we knew it would be. And as I said, we're really honored that you joined us today. There are a number of questions already pouring in, but maybe let's start where you left off, which is this is going to be a long, hard road. And I think that the people on this call today are with you and will be with you. And one of the very first questions that we got that I think illustrates this point is, what is the most important thing, or, feel free to take liberty to tell us things that Jews in the diaspora can do to support Israel right now?
Very good. I'm glad for that question. Very happy. Thank you. Obviously, it's supporting organizations like Hatzalah. Obviously, I have a soft spot. We have been trying madly to raise money because there's about a $30 million now deficit. And that's only for the next couple of weeks. What we need, there were thousands and thousands of people wounded, thousands and thousands of people suffering from trauma. And there was Hatzalah. And we watched the gauze and the bandages just disappear. And we have to replenish those stocks. You have these fearless, selfless 1,700 volunteers going out on these amphicicles under fire. Some have been killed, wounded, risking their lives to save their fellow Israelis, by Jews and Arabs alike, and Arabs going out to save Jews in the midst of these horrors. So that's always very close to my heart. You should know your support for Hatzalah is simply saving lives. Beyond that, politically, make your feelings known to your representatives on the state level, on the federal level, even on the local level in Cleveland. There's going to be protests. There are going to be ugly protests. There have been ugly protests. There have been ugly protests on campuses. Fight back, demonstrate, raise your voices, write in your papers, call into your radio stations. Do not be silent. And do not let the press get away with words like militants instead of terrorists, because the only reason they're called militants is because they're victims of Jews. Do not let them equate Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad as a source that has equal validity, equal weight with the state of Israel. This is what happened with the hospital incident this week. You saw the headline in the New York Times, the headlines, Israel bombs a hospital, kills 500. Okay? Not even bothering to check with us. Not even bothering to check with us. And that, too, is a form, how do I say it? It's a form of anti-Semitism. And would anybody in the world cite as a source the ISIS Ministry of Health or the Al-Qaeda Ministry of Health and say, give it equal weight with the Pentagon? Only with Israel. Do not let them get away with that. I write a Substack. It's a newsletter that comes out. It's called Clarity. I've again hammered in on these issues. Do not let them get away with militants. Do not let them get away with the Palestinian Health Ministry. It's Orwellian. Think about it. This is an organization that's dedicated to genocide and calling it a health ministry. It's perverse. Be vocal about it, because it's going to go on and on and on. During the night, I know it's late here. It's 11:30 at night, but my night's just starting because I do interviews throughout the night because that's prime time in Cleveland. And I've noticed a change in the narrative. We got a bit of a grace period, didn't we? The massacre of 1,500 Jews gets you a grace period in the press, and it started in Europe. And now interviewing with the BBC, I had an interview with the Times of London today. It's all about Palestinian suffering and the suffering we're causing, and how this conflict happened because we don't have a two-state solution, which is totally ludicrous. This has nothing to do with peace. It has everything to do with terror. Hamas is no different than ISIS, no different than Al-Qaeda. It hates peace. It kills Palestinians who want peace. And every time we try to make peace, Hamas blew up Israelis and threw Palestinians off the roof. It has nothing to do with it. Know the facts. Speak up about the facts. Do not be silent.
Thank you so much. Another question we received is your take on the UN and why the UN, why their role in the plight of the Palestinians seems to be ignored.
Well, if you're talking about UNRWA, UNRWA is one of the great catalysts for conflict, and one of the great means for perpetuating conflict. But you have these schools in which Palestinian children are taught about return. They're not talking about a two-state solution in the UNRWA schools. They're not talking about peace. They don't even mention Israel. So they're basically, breeding grounds for future terrorists. Beneath the UNRWA schools are the tunnels, and the Hamas used them. Again, in this Substack I put out, I think yesterday, was that I recalled back in 2008, 2009, the Cast-led operation. I was in that operation, so reserve officer, and one night Hamas claimed that we struck an UNRWA school with a mortar shell and killed 51 children. And the Palestinian Health Ministry, reported the deaths of the 51 children. It was picked up the entire press, the entire Western press, and it turned out it was completely false. No mortar shell ever fell in UNRWA school. No children were killed. So, and the damage is done. So why do they do this? Let me explain something, if I can, briefly. Our enemies, even though they have killed over 1,500 Israelis and taken 202 hostages and caused us immense trauma, I can't stress that enough, they cannot destroy us. They can't. And they know it. They can, however, deny us the right to defend ourselves and ultimately deny us the right to exist as a Jewish state. How does it work? Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, they do not have a military strategy. They have a military tactic. They shoot at us, and they get us to shoot back at them. So they kill us, and then they get us to kill their own populations, which they use as human shields. That's why Hamas is trying to prevent Palestinian refugees from going to the south. They want to keep them in the battle area so that we'll kill them. And when that happens, that's the military tactic. Then we go to the strategy. Strategy is, first of all, a media strategy. It's the horrible images that come out. It's the Western press that starts focusing on Palestinian suffering and starts accusing us of disproportionality and war crimes. And then that immediately translates into diplomatic action. Governments start pressing and condemning us. And finally, condemnations in the Security Council and other international forums moves into criminal courts where we are criminalized. That's the legal aspect. That's the legal strategy. So a military tactic serves a media, diplomatic, and legal strategy. The end of that is we are denied the right to defend ourselves. We have all the great planes in the world, but they can't take off. We've got all these tanks, but they can't roll because we don't have the legitimacy to use them. And ultimately, we'll be boycotted and sanctioned and killed as a sovereign Jewish state. That's their goal. And they do it stage after stage. They're very methodical about it, very smart, never underestimate their intelligence. And that is what we, including you and the Cleveland community, that's what we have to fight against.
Thank you. So that's, again, feeds very well into our next question. The question itself pertained to the last conflict with Hezbollah, but I'll make it a little broader. Why will this time be different? Why will this time be different that Israel will have the latitude to remove Hamas as a threat? And then the question itself was, why do you think the U.S. might engage in conflict with Hezbollah this time when last time there was no hint of that?
Right. Well, there are two different questions. One is I think that Israeli people now are determined. This is now our fifth round of fighting with Hamas. And every time our decision makers, rightly and wrongly, have determined that the Israeli people were unwilling to pay the price of going into Gaza. And we're talking about a very steep price. And now there's no question about it. I haven't heard anybody say we shouldn't be going in, including the families of the hostages. Many, not all of them. That is a sea change. Very big departure from previous Israeli opinion. And so we're determined to do this. We're determined to do this. Again, I think the president is right in wanting to know about the morning after, because that morning after is may guarantee our security. There's no, you can kill, Hamas has 150,000 followers. It's not like you can kill them all. And you can maybe destroy their infrastructure and degrade their ability to hurt us. At the end of the day, you can't extinguish the idea of Hamas, which is an idea to create a universal caliphate, right? It's the same idea as Al Qaeda and Hezbollah and ISIS, exactly the same idea. The only difference with Hamas is that in the first step of creating the universal caliphate, you have to destroy the state of Israel. So that's their goal, and to create an Islamic Palestinian state. And so that's above our pay grade as the state of Israel. We are one of the major sort of public diplomacy themes I've been hammering in on my interviews at night is that this is not a war between Hamas and Gaza, Hamas and the state of Israel. It is not a war between Israel and Hamas. It is a war between civilization and evil, civilization and darkness. This is not just our fight; it's your fight. And I thoroughly believe it. And I think that President Biden believes it too. He seems to say it. I think he believes it. We just don't have words. In recent days, we've been going on saying that these people are actually worse than the Nazis. The Nazis killed Jews, sort of industrially, methodically. These people enjoyed it. They mutilated, they burned, they tied families together and executed them one after another, and then filmed it and put it on the family Facebook again and again and again. We are talking about a level of evil that I don't know if this world's ever seen. And so that is that fight. I now forgot what the second question is. Oh, why do I think the United States will intervene this time? Besides the fact that I know Joe Biden, I think that I think that by moving these massive naval forces into the Middle East, he's declared a new age. America's back. But if he doesn't intervene, if these ships just stay there and float, then the message to the world would be much worse than if they hadn't been sent at all. And I don't think anybody in Washington can afford to have that happen. This is in many ways will do much to restore America's own deterrence power in the wake of the withdrawal from Afghanistan and other places. It is an opportunity, and I can't assign a probability to it. I don't know, but my gut feeling tells me that those two flotillas will be engaged in some way as Hezbollah is dragged into this.
Thank you. Just before this Zoom started, I saw a breaking news alert from the Times of Israel that missiles shot from Yemen toward Israel were shot down by a U.S. warship. What we haven't talked about much is Iran and their influence over all of this. And we got a question about Iran's involvement, and at what point would Iran directly engage, or do you think they'll continue to act through proxies? And I guess as a follow-up to that is, will Iran pay a price for doing what we all know they're obviously behind?
Well, I assume that we would be receiving rocket fire from the Houthis in Yemen, as well as from Shiite militias in Iraq. They all have rockets, and they're all aimed at us. That was the great grand plan of Hassan Soleimani, the head of the Al-Quds force that was assassinated by the United States. His idea was to ring Israel with missiles on all sides, and they've largely accomplished that. They haven't done as well as they wanted to do in Syria, because we keep on intervening and preventing them from transforming Syria into a front base. But they're trying. We keep on bombing in Syria, even as everything is going on with Hamas and Hezbollah. We're still bombing in Syria. Again, I'm not a spokesman for the government. I have my own feelings about this. I talked to you about before about this article I published in the Israeli press. I think I mentioned it about taking on Hezbollah first. I hope, this is my long-standing hope, not just from this round of fighting, that we stop playing with Iran's proxies. The proxies shoot at us, we shoot back, we get condemned, and Iran each time gets off scot-free. And that's got to end. That has to end. The Saudis say you don't hit the tail of the snake, you hit the head of the snake. And my own, again, it's politically incorrect what I'm going to say, but I'm a Clintonian. What do I mean? I'm not talking about Bill Clinton. I'm calling about Clint Eastwood. And Clint Eastwood, those of us old enough to remember the Dirty Harry movies, had a famous line: "Go ahead, pull the trigger, make my day." Go ahead, Iran, pull the trigger, make our day.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question, sir, and then we'll let you go. We're so grateful again for your time with us. In regards to the repeated statements that we're going to eradicate Hamas, that Israel's going to eradicate Hamas, how does that get accomplished? I mean, Hamas is very good at disappearing into the civilian population. Presumably, many of their fighters are fleeing south with civilians. They have leaders in foreign countries. So what does that look like? And is it really achievable?
It is achievable on the military level and logistic level. You just blow up everything. You blow up all those tunnels. You blow up the bunkers. You kill their leaders. You degrade and decimate their ranks. You eliminate their missile arsenals, their explosive arsenals at all. I said earlier, I was being very forthright with you. You can't eliminate the idea of Hamas. That is a regional, in many ways, global idea. And yet it will resurface. And we're always going to have to be vigilant. I'm not using this to advertise, but on that Clarity, my first Clarity edition, I wrote about a eulogy that Moshe Dayan gave for a friend of his, Roy Watberg, in 1956. And in this eulogy, Roy Watberg was killed tending the fields near Gaza. He was killed by terrorists from Gaza. And I really recommend everyone read this eulogy. And because Dayan said in 1956, we've come back to our homeland, but we have to understand that we're always going to have a plow in one hand and a sword or a rifle in the other, because that's where we live. And this is our destiny. And I thought it was a remarkable piece. I've actually discussed it in the White House, this eulogy. Many Israelis know it very well. I call it the eulogy of truth. And that's the truth. We live in an unspeakably tough neighborhood. And we're always going to have to be vigilant. We're always going to have to guard our borders. We're going to learn to guard our borders much, much, much better. We'll learn from these mistakes, and we will emerge from this stronger and more united. Of that, I'm confident. In every crisis, is that opportunity. This is a terrible crisis, but there are some very promising opportunities for unity and strength and renewal here, and I hope we'll all seize them. So again, Jason and Erica, thank you for hosting me so graciously this evening. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to everyone in the Cleveland community, and I have many friends there. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And we are absolutely grateful to you. We know you have a lot of demands on your time and appearances with international media. So for you to take time out of your day to speak with us, we're filled with gratitude, and we are with you. Please take the message back that the people of Cleveland are with you, America's with you, and of course, we in the diaspora are with you. So Am Yisrael Chai. And with that, thank you, Dr. Oren. I ask everyone to just stick around for one more second, because I do want to update you on how you can help. I touched on this previously, but we all know the situation is evolving, and needs are going to rapidly increase in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Right now, we are in the position of raising funds for both our 2024 campaign for Jewish needs, as well as our Israel emergency campaign. And it's really impossible to do one or the other. We need you to do one and the other. We need you to do both. The strong annual campaign is what's needed to keep everything moving that moves during peacetime. Not to mention that a lot of that money is what keeps our agencies locally being able to perform their functions. It's what keeps our security forces keeping us safe. And you know that the need for them is only going to increase as this war drags on. So please support the emergency campaign, but also, if you haven't already, make your commitment for the 2024 campaign for Jewish needs. Among the first recipients to receive funding, as I said, was United Hatzalah, the Jewish Agency's fund for victims of terror, the Israel Trauma Coalition, hospitals, and many others. Our commitment yesterday, today, and tomorrow allows immediate response when lives are at stake. At the same time, when emergency funds are needed, we act, and that's why we created this Israel Emergency Relief Campaign. And you heard Dr. Oren reference it. I referenced it earlier. The Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Foundation initially announced a $12 million matching grant, but the response from Cleveland has been so positive that they already increased it to a $15 million matching grant. And they're still doing their Mandel multiplier for annual campaign gifts. If you want to know more about that, you can speak to someone at Federation. Again, as a reminder, 100% of your donation to the Israel Emergency Campaign will go towards helping people. There will be nothing taken off for administrative expenses. And you see on the screen how you can donate. Obviously, for all of your donations, you can go to jewishcleveland.org, but you can do this right now with the information in front of you. Now more than ever, Israel needs your support. Jewish Cleveland needs your support. And we know that we're going to prevail, but we prevail when we act together. So please stand with us. A few upcoming programs. These are an opportunity for us to physically be together, which I know for me is very helpful right now. You can join the Young Leadership Division for a night of unity on Thursday, October 26th. And then there will be another important evening with former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett on Wednesday, November 15th. So please keep those events in mind and join us. And of course, we are here for you. In addition to all the other needs that are in front of us, we are always here for each member of this community. And so if you or anyone in your family or in your network needs additional assistance right now, please reach out to Access Jewish Cleveland. And we will get you the help we need, whatever we can do within our purview. So again, Thank you all so very much for joining us. And as I said to Dr. Oren, Am Yisrael Chai.